Alrighty, guys, nobody submits an essay that they think is bad. Every applicant hits submit believing that the essay is finished and strong. And a lot of them are quite wrong for the reasons that they never see. So today, Melody from Vantage Point MBA will talk about the 5 mistakes that applicants make without ever realizing that they're making them. So none of them look like errors, and that's kind of what makes them expensive. But Melody, thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm excited to hear these 5 mistakes that people make in their essays.
Wow, thank you so much for that introduction. And when we were planning this topic, I mean, this is especially for all of you who are applying in round 1 right now. These are mistakes that could cost you the outcome you want, and they're completely avoidable, and that's a great news. So keep watching, and we're not only going to call out the mistakes, but point out what you can do instead to avoid them. So I'm super excited.
Awesome. Well, I guess let's just start directly with mistake number 1. I'm excited to hear what it is. What is the number 1 mistake that you think students make?
Ooh, I don't know if I would say this is the number 1, but it's definitely the first lowest hanging fruit that I call out, even in like a first or second draft of a client's essay. And that is when you're telling a story, leaving out the result, leaving out what I call the happy ending, the resolution. And what I see happen over and over again, especially in limited word count, is that applicants get so caught up in writing about what they did and what the context was and what happened and what sort of circumstances were surrounding the action they took, that they forget to actually conclude the story with the amazing outcome, right? How it all ended for them and what was the impact of the result that they drove. But the reality is the result or the outcome is what provides proof to your reader that what you did actually mattered and why. And so that result is so important to say, hey, I didn't just do these things, but these things had a purpose. They made a real difference to real people or to an organization or to a team. And here is why that was important given the context. And so that's really the difference between your story reading like an FYI and it reading like something that has a concrete takeaway for the reader. Does that make sense, Sylvie?
Yeah, kind of. Maybe it's because applicants might feel like, is it like bragging in a weird way? Is that fear justified?
I think it's a couple of things. I think it's almost not realizing that component of the story is missing, or they feel so focused on talking about what they did, right? I'm going to use Columbia's second essay as an example. So Columbia Business School, in their second essay question, asks about a time when you made a community and organization more collaborative or more inclusive. And what I see in this essay, for example, is that applicants spend all the time, the whole essay, talking about what they did to make it inclusive, but then don't actually provide the proof that it was more inclusive, or that they did build community, or that they did make an organization more collaborative, right? And so you're kind of asking the reader to assume that that's what happened based on the actions you took, but you're sort of like taking away that grand finale.
But what if, let's say, the result was small, or the project sort of didn't work out? So would you still include it in a way?
Absolutely. So if the project didn't work out, I mean, that's reality, that's life, right? Yeah. And so if you've still decided that this is the best story to tell for other reasons, then maybe the takeaway is more like what you learned from the failure, or how that taught you to do things differently the next time. So I think there still needs to be a key takeaway or a resolution to the story. If the impact is small, that's okay. The impact still matters, because even if that just means it impacted one person or a moment in time for one person, it still matters, right? That's still someone's lived experience and that you've influenced or impacted. And so you still want to share that and explain why it was meaningful to them in that moment, even if you might feel like in the grand scheme of things, it's more minor.
Correct. Would it be okay to give us an example of a weak ending and what the stronger version of that same ending would be?
I mean, a week ending would literally just talk about, I don't have an example right in front of me, so I'm trying to think about a specific client draft that I've received recently.
Yeah.
I can't read the word by word, but I can tell you the situation. So I'm working with a client right now who's writing this essay about cultural transformation that he drove at his firm. So he works at a small private equity firm right now, very old school, very traditional. A lot of folks, you know, who were founding members of the company 40 years ago, who are still working there. And he kind of came in as a young, energetic energy at the firm, and how he made the team more collaborative and started organizing happy hours and eating lunch together and things like that. And in the first draft of his essay, he really just ended with, and we organized happy hours for the team to get together outside of work. And everyone was really excited to participate in our Super Bowl pool this year. End of story.
Interesting.
Right? Whereas what's missing from that is, okay, that's great that you did all those things, but what is the proof that it was more collaborative? What does that mean for the business? Does that mean, what does that look like in reality, right? That looks like he now sees people congregating around the refrigerator at lunchtime and chit-chatting about their weekend plans and like where their kids are going to college. And that also means that, you know, casual conversation now gets junior people looped into investment committee conversations that were previously only reserved for the partner and principal level. And so all of a sudden, what he did wasn't just a nice thing, it made a real impact on the organization.
Interesting. Okay. Very interesting. Well, if anybody here feels like that mistake, goes for them, like this video, right? Because now we're going to be diving into mistake number 2, which I'm excited to hear about. So first one was about not showing the results, but what would the second one be?
Yes. So the second one is what I have lovingly dubbed telling instead of sharing. And we've all heard of show, don't tell, right? Like that's almost a cliche in the MBA admissions world. If you're working with a consultant, at some point, I am sure they have told you show, don't tell. But my version of that is actually share, don't tell. And share, don't tell is just as important. And what do I mean by that? I mean, writing about an idea or a value or a belief objectively instead of sharing your point of view. Right? The former feels like preaching, right? You're talking about the importance of a value or why you think this particular idea is right. Whereas the second one allows a reader to get to know you because they see the world through your eyes. They understand what your perspective is on something and what it means to you personally. And so it's nuanced, but it's a really important distinction, particularly in essays that are so short, right? The word count keeps getting reduced every single year. And what that means is that there is absolutely no room for filler sentences or fluffy words or sentences. Every single thing that you say needs to further your objective, which is to help the admissions committee say yes about your application. So that means you want to help them get to know you better, how you see the world, how you make decisions, how you've driven impact. And that is the most effective way of doing that, while also allowing them to picture you as a productive member of their community or contributing member.
You use the word preaching. So what does preaching look like on the page?
Yeah, so I actually did pull out a sample for this question in preparation for our session today, because I knew that an example was going to be really valuable to bring this to life, because it is a nuanced thing. So these are excerpts from actual client essays. And so this is what like preaching or sharing or preaching or telling could look like, right? Belonging is not a nice to have within an organization, but a necessity that impacts the ability of individuals and teams to perform their best. Right? It's a statement.
Let's repeat that.
Okay. Belonging. So here's the context. This is in the context of someone's Stanford What Matters Most to You and Why essay. And the what matters most to you and why, and the theme of this person's essay is about belonging. And so belonging is not a nice to have within an organization, but a necessity that impacts the ability of individuals and teams to perform at their best. I think I lost you, Selby. All right, well, I'm going to keep going. And so that is the before, that is tell, that is preaching. The after, it sounds something like this. Creating belonging, first for myself and then for others, has been the defining thread in my life. It matters most to me because I know what it's like to question my place and how feeling safe, seen, and valued can change everything.
Oh, sorry, I think I had a technical difficulty there.
That's okay. That's okay. I just kept going.
I wanted to hear what does preaching look like?
Okay, let me start all over. Okay, so preaching, again, what does this mean? It means stating something as fact or in sense implying that this is how someone else should see it. And so the context of the example I'm sharing is this is someone's what matters most to you and why essay for Stanford GSB. And the what matters most to this particular applicant was belonging. So, belonging in a community, belonging in a family, belonging in an organization. And so his original mistake was a sentence like this. Belonging is not a nice to have within an organization, but a necessity that impacts the ability of individuals and teams to perform their best. So he's basically telling you why belonging is important, right? Similar to, how potentially a preacher would sit up at the pulpit and talk about, how you should interpret a particular verse of the Bible or religious text.
Whereas, if it were me, I would think like this sounds great, but like, what if someone's reading their draft? How do they spot stuff like this?
Because this literally tells you nothing about the applicant.
Oh.
Nothing. And doesn't answer the question.
Interesting.
It doesn't tell me anything about what matters most to this client or this applicant and why, right? It is just a statement about something that they think you should also believe is true.
Interesting. So if we take something like a common one like leadership or integrity, what would the telling version of it be, and what would the sharing version of that be?
So, telling would be, leadership. I'm just totally spitballing here. Leadership requires sacrifice and putting the best interest of your team and organization ahead of your own.
Well, everyone knows that.
Did you learn anything about me by saying that? Right?
I see.
Right?
And then the sharing version of that.
And so sharing looks like this. And I'm going to first share the example from the belonging piece, and then we can spitball some other examples. So the sharing version is this: creating belonging first for myself, then for others, has been the defining thread in my life. It matters most to me because I know what it's like to question my place and how feeling safe, seen, and valued can change everything.
Oh, that sounds much better.
So it's saying the same thing, but now it's sharing your experience and why something matters to you, as opposed to making a universal statement about what everyone should believe to be true and presenting something as a black or white fact.
Interesting. I really like this. And this is, I think anyone would make this easy. Like, do applicants normally make this mistake a lot, in your opinion? Oh, crazy.
Yes.
Crazy.
Yes. Crazy. And I see this mistake a lot too, actually, in the second HBS essay, the leadership focused essay. So that essay, the prompt is, what experiences have shaped how you invest in others and how you lead? But it's a very short essay. So there's not, you don't have tons of words to talk about the whole journey that your life has taken to help develop your viewpoint. And so a lot of applicants will skip over the experiences and the how and just write about, leadership is, or investing in others means blah, 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 blah. But it's not showing why they view it that way and what has shaped that particular definition or viewpoint.
How I see it is, it's kind of like stop defining things, because anyone can search it up on Google or through AI, but no one can actually figure out like what it means for you, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone again has gone through that same mistake, please like the video, because we're going to be jumping to the third one. So, but yeah, you were saying, Melody.
No, I was just going to say that these are not objective facts, right? Even if a lot of people agree with them, what matters and what the AdCom is evaluating in your application is not if you believe in the commonly held belief, right? It's about what is your viewpoint and what does that mean about your future potential, and again, how you're going to show up in a classroom environment and in the community in an MBA program.
Correct. Does mistake number 3 tie into the first 2 in any way?
Yes and no. I think you'll notice these all have a theme. And the theme of these mistakes, again, is just it's subtle ways in which you express yourself in your essays that make a huge difference, and it requires scratching beneath the surface. The mistake is always, the surface level attempt, and the thing you should do, right, is like I call it peeling back the layers of the onion, continuing to ask why. What does this mean to you? And continuing to wear kind of your like you glasses instead of kind of putting yourself into a third party authorship point of view.
Interesting. So, can you talk a little bit about it?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm excited to
Mistake number 3, naming the emotion and thinking that's vulnerability.
Why do I feel like everyone does that?
Naming the emotion, yes. And here's the thing, applicants know that they're supposed to be vulnerable, right? If you've been anywhere on TikTok or Reddit or spoken to a single admissions consultant, that word is going to pop up, especially when we're talking about applications to the top programs like Harvard or Stanford. They know they're supposed to be vulnerable. But for a lot of folks, that they think that just means naming a feeling, right? If I can name the feeling and like, shocker, I have feelings, that's enough, right? I am not invulnerable. And so naming a feeling would look like this, like, I was worried my mistake would get me fired. Okay. So named the feeling, worry. Is that enough, right? But that is not real vulnerability, because real vulnerability explains what the worry looked like in terms of your lived experience and ultimately how that informed your decisions next. Right? You need to really take that to the next level. So a next level of I was worried the mistake would get me fired let me think what this would look like. It would look like I suddenly the self-doubt from my childhood came rushing back. And I wondered if this was finally the moment when they would realize that they made a mistake in hiring me.
Oh, crazy. So
right?
You need to sort of tie it down to past experiences in a way.
Ideally, but it's like, what does worry mean to you? Worry means like, I believe that I am not good enough to be there. And that this mistake is like the straw that broke the camel's back. That is much more vulnerable, and that is admitting something versus just saying I was worried, which, like, frankly, I mean, when literally anyone makes a mistake, if they're human, they're probably worried like, oh crap, I hope I don't get fired over this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that completely. And but one more thing I wanted to ask was how much of emotion should you show in your essay in general? Because then if you explain every single emotion like that, won't that be too much?
Yes, it is a balance. You want to choose the right points to emphasize.
Yeah.
And depending on the context, depending on the question you're answering, depending on the, what you're trying to communicate and your purpose for telling that story, you're going to choose to like zoom in on specific moments that help drive that point home and further elaborate on the key takeaway you want the reader to have.
Interesting. Okay. Well, is there anything else about mistake number 3 that you want to mention more in detail?
I think in terms of what to do for this mistake, it really is about making sure you're really exploring the why behind statements that you make and behind actions that you took and what you were thinking and feeling in that moment. And that's actually going to lead me to the next mistake that I want to share. But this is honestly, it's hard to sometimes know if you've gone far enough with this. Is I think when a read from either a close friend or even a consultant can be really helpful, because they can help pick up on where things feel superficial or underdeveloped. And then you can kind of use that feedback to probe further.
But what is this mistake number 4 that you said?
Yes. Writing only from hindsight.
Okay.
Writing only from hindsight. So as you were asking me earlier, why do you think that applicants leave out the result? I think part of it is also that they're writing from hindsight, and to them, the outcome is like a foregone conclusion. And so they almost forget that the reader hasn't been there, right? The reader hasn't experienced it. But when you're almost blinded to your own experience, you leave out essential details that might be the points that really make your story stand out, right? You already know how the story ends, but the reader doesn't. And so when you write from a firsthand account or like your firsthand POV, it allows the reader to experience the nuances of the situation. And for example, like understand why maybe a seemingly obvious decision was really difficult for you, or why something you did that might seem ordinary was very extraordinary in those particular circumstances. And so it's almost about letting them like see the story through your own eyes, like reality television, right? As opposed to like reporting on it like a news anchor is reporting on something that happened in the past.
Oh, okay. No, I think I'm kind of getting it, but I would love if you can give an example.
Oh gosh, Selby, I don't have an example.
Okay, like a very short one. Maybe of a recent student who, didn't left out really crucial details and,
Yes.
kind of
Okay. All right. I'm going to go back to the example that I shared with you earlier about the applicant who was writing about the cultural transformation at his company. And so in the original version of this essay, it was very focused on, I wanted deeper connections with my coworkers because you come from a larger organization. And so I started, asking them about their weekend plans. I started popping my head into their office when they were free to ask about their families and ask about their kids, ask if they wanted to go to lunch with me. And then that grew into weekly lunches together. And then soon our executives noticed, and then they joined. And it was very much like it was just a rundown of like the things that happened. But to me, I'm like, okay, client, this is great, but like none of this seems special. It just seems like you just being you. Like, why was this so hard? Why was this so uncomfortable for you? And then we start teasing out, okay, but this was a very like top heavy, much older organization, very stuffy. Like everyone was still wearing suits to work every day. And I was the youngest person, and it was uncomfortable because at first when I was doing this, people were like looking at me like I had 3 heads. Like, who is this kid like interrupting me in the middle of my busy day, right? And so all of a sudden, all of these like experiences started coming through. I'm like, okay, but that context is what makes the story. Because now you're showing that you are someone who puts yourself out there and who puts themselves in uncomfortable situations, because you believe that building that connection isn't just to make everyone have more fun during the day, but it's actually going to help the company. It's going to help business. It's going to make all of those like casual conversations that happen, not in a formal meeting setting, turn those into a strength across the team and making things happen and getting people involved in decisions who otherwise wouldn't have had a seat at the table.
Interesting. Do you ever make an applicant read the first ever essay that they wrote and then compare to like after all of the adding all these details, like this is the final outcome? And they're
Sometimes.
like, oh my God, like
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes. I mean, especially when we're on like V14.
oh
Um,
good Lord.
and I'm like, and they're about to click submit. I'm like, just, for funsies, why don't you go back and look at how far you've come since that first draft?
Oh God. And they would note down all the 4 mistakes that you just said, like, yeah, this
Yeah.
kind of sums it up.
Yeah.
But what is
Yeah.
mistake number 5? And this is the last mistake, but I feel like it would be an interesting one indeed.
Yes. Yeah. So I would say, so this one is potentially a little bit different in theme from the other 4, but it was really important to include. And so I included it at the end. But this is making others the main character of your story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a mistake, especially that comes from such a good place, because applicants don't want to take credit where it's not due. They often are, the most junior or one of the most junior people at their organization. So they don't feel like they can really take credit or ownership for anything because they're like, I didn't do it. It was a we. I also just think that for a lot of us, it's way more comfortable talking about someone else than it is talking about ourselves. And that's just human nature. But unfortunately, the challenge that MBA applications require you to step up to is to write about yourself and to do so in a way that really opens up the door to getting to know you better and understanding your experiences and your perspective. And so this mistake manifests in so many different ways across different essays. I mean, it could be one very straightforward example is, again, back in Stanford's What Matters Most to You and Why, opening that essay with the story of a family member who overcame a challenge, right? A parent, for example, or a grandparent who inspired this person. While that is certainly has shaped them and has had an influence on the applicant's life, this is not an essay about that other person's lived experience. It is about their own. And so if you choose to write about how someone else impacted you, it still needs to be through your own eyes and not go into so much detail about what someone else experienced. And so that's one piece of it. And then I think also, particularly in stories around collaboration, right, where it was a group and a team effort, oftentimes applicants will either just say we a little too much. So, and we is appropriate, by the way. I'm not saying don't say we, but the reader needs to also see what you did individually in the context of the we. Or, giving someone else credit, like, my boss tasked me with the job of doing this. And when he gave me the feedback of X, then I did Y, right? It's almost like handing off the agency to someone else instead of talking about it in terms of, what you did and what ideas and thoughts you had to make it better. Obviously, if feedback you received is relevant, don't exclude it, include it, but make it all about how you reacted to the feedback and how you use that to make something better.
Can the opposite of this mistake also be just as bad? Like, in a way, kind of being too like I me
Yes.
me.
Oh yeah. It definitely can. It's funny because you would think that comes up a lot within our clients, and it could just be the wonderful clients we have a chance to work with. It's more around building their confidence and helping them see how important of a role they played in a particular situation. But yes, I mean, there is obviously the opposite end of that spectrum, which is just unrealistic credit, right? Like if an analyst in an investment bank says, I led the deal process and closed a $500 million, M&A transaction, I'm going to call BS on that because I know you didn't. Yeah, maybe you ran one work stream within that. You ran diligence, or you were coordinating between lawyers and diligence partners, et cetera. That I believe, but you gotta balance taking credit for what you owned without overselling your contribution.
Nice. Well, I hope that the 5 mistakes that we just talked about helped anyone who's watching this at the moment. But please, guys, if you feel like even one of them you've made so far in your essays, just like this video, because this video might help the next applicant who is hoping to go to business school. But we've spent this whole session on what goes wrong. Kind of, let's flip it a little bit, Melody. When an essay is genuinely good, what is it doing? What are the traits that you see again and again in the essays that work?
I mean, the essays that work just feel like nobody else could have written them, right? They are heartfelt, and I don't mean in an oversharing, mushy way. I just mean they are sincere. They express a distinct point of view that is earned from experience that they have very well shared and explained to the reader. And they answer the question directly, right? Most importantly, I think for some of these questions, you get so lost in the what's and the whys and the hows of a story that you forget to zero back and say, okay, did I actually answer the question? But I would say maybe that's the other piece of it too, is not only is it heartfelt and personal and distinct to you, but it's also answering the question directly and not trying too hard to plug into an agenda that is not in place, that's out of place in that particular context.
Interesting. Well, okay, so I guess we'll close it up here. But Melody, if there's any, what's a way that people can reach out to you in case they're having essay troubles?
Essay troubles, yes. I wish everyone all the best with their essays, particularly if you're submitting here in just a week or so for round 1. But yes, if you'd like to chat with our team on how we can help take your essays to the next level, you can find us at vantagepointmba.com and click on the button in the top right-hand corner to request a consultation. There'll be a brief questionnaire, and then we'll get on your calendar.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Melody. This was a very lovely discussion. And again, guys, if you're watching this, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel, because Melody and I will be going live again in the future with another interesting topic in mind. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, Melody. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Take care.